Shayan, this podcast, what do you actually want people to take away from this podcast?
For not me, for this podcast, for the community of the very best. And the reason is at the end of each season or at the end of each year, depends.
If you could invite anyone, who would that be and why?
So, Canada is a constitutional monarchy.
It completely flops, no views, no engagement, nothing. What would you do then?
Another reason I'm doing this podcast is about the free speech. I'm so excited finally after 3 months, 4 months, I'm planning for this podcast and we are starting it right now. What do you think?
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, it's just like it was like too much pressure on me these days. And for the starting this podcast, I really wanted to everything be perfect. But at the end, I was telling just myself, the best thing is just to start it. Don't like delay on it anymore, whatever happened. So like, for example, today we were not so lucky. Our room beside us, there are lots of kids. They are like I think a hockey game team, something, and they are shouting a lot. So I'm hoping like our editor be able to remove all of those noises. And yeah, anyway, so yeah, here is our podcast. Thanks to Alex helping us set up this. And yeah, so in this podcast, which we are gonna call it from now, the very best. Uh, this is gonna be about uh, I can say a multi-topic podcast. A multi-topic podcast with different seasons. And for the first season, we are trying to promote the culture of Miramichi, the history behind it, and the stories, experiences, not only the people who used to live here, but also the newcomers. We have so many good sponsors. First sponsor is the city of Miramichi, and it's great to have a community leader behind you that they are supporting your program. And at the same time, the Rot Hotel also became our sponsor too, that led us actually record our podcast in their conference rooms here, which is like, I love it here. It's just beautiful. Like their restaurant is my favorite. Their foods are delicious, beautiful bars, beautiful view to the bridge. I'm a fan of the bridge. So yeah, so we have these two great sponsors for the first season of this podcast, the very best, which is going to be about the history, culture, and the stories of the Miramichi, the people who had a real impact in the community, or the stories that are cool that so many people might not even like hear about them. And yeah, we are gonna invite so many people here for the first season. And yeah, how do you feel about it? I know you were like in the background, like all of the steps I'm taking up. What do you think?
Yeah, it's very exciting to be doing this project about the city. I don't know if it was done before, this type of podcast for the Miramichi. So it is exciting.
I don't think so, honestly. Like the podcast that be a multi-topic podcast, bringing people, having a conversation. Probably there was, honestly. I'm not sure. I don't want to say that. But we are going to continue this. If there was before, that I'm sure it was probably. We are not going to be the first one, but I'm trying to be the person who continue. I know a lot of podcasts that they were in Miramichi, but they stopped doing it for many other reasons. That was very sad. But yeah, so
I didn't know that.
yeah, we have like I think they were doing a podcast in the what's the name of that restaurant in the corner, Irish restaurant? I don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah, they were doing a podcast. So that was very cool. And I kind of that really admired me to start doing this again. And that's one of the reason I actually started. And some of my other reason I started this podcast is bringing people together. I love networking, talking to people, having a chat with them. And this time I decided to run it as a podcast. Personally, I listen to a lot of podcasts and they are kind of replacing books, I think. So many people, instead of reading books, they're listening to podcasts. In some points are good, some points not too really good. It's not really, you can't really replace podcasts with a book. I don't really suggest that. But many people are listening to uh, podcasts during while they're driving or while they're at work or on their spare time. So I want to do my best to transfer good information, good experience, and good stories to the listeners or to the people who are watching it, maybe from the YouTube, if they subscribe us. And yeah, that's what I'm thinking, that it's gonna be very nice.
Yeah, that's an interesting point of view. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's what I'm thinking to do. And do you, like, while I was like on this, have you ever like kind of have any question from me that you want to might ask?
Yes, so I do have some questions for you. Today I will be interviewing you for your podcast. Um,
Before that, sorry, that's a good point that you said. So many times I wanted to invite, I didn't know who should I invite for the first time for my first episode. And I came up with this idea. Let's together sit, talk about the behind the scene project, that what was happening so far, why we want to start this, and what we have done so far, and what's the reason, what is this podcast going to be about. So our audience is going to know both of us first, Sophie, and then on the next episode, we are going to have our first guest.
okay.
Yeah, so this is a very good idea. I didn't want to come alone, just talking to the camera, saying, "Hey, hello, this is the very best podcast. I'm your host, Shayan." But I would like to have a chat instead
Yeah,
of just talking to the camera.
that makes sense. So, so Cheyenne, with this podcast, what do you actually want people to take away from this podcast?
Okay, this podcast is for the, as I said, it can be for everyone. And the people, what I want them to take away is the experience of other people. So many times it happened that especially like young people doesn't like to take an advice. When people, especially like me, if someone come to me and doesn't matter younger than me or older than me and give me an advice, I'm not listening to that at all. But if we have someone actually here that tell their just stories, people subconsciously, I think, they learn about that story. They will understand, they can feel like a connection. Say, oh, I have this challenge, for example, that this guy had in the very best podcast, and I think he had some solutions that I can use it in my life. So those experiences and those stories would be the best perspective for my audiences, and they can like take out those information. So that's the point to do. We are trying to like attract more young people too, and I would really appreciate them if they can, for especially the beginning of this podcast, support us, share our podcast with their friends, and even let us know what they want to see actually, because it's not my podcast, it's not your podcast, it's the or community podcast. If they want to have a special guest here, I would love to. Like, I have this tradition in this podcast. If, for example, you name anyone, like by randomly or by purpose, I would invite them. I would send them an invitation letter to join us on this podcast, having a conversation. So if they want us to have anybody on this podcast, I would love to, they comment or send me a message that they want me to talk about this topic and we want this person on your podcast every best. So that's my idea. That's what I'm thinking about.
Hmm. That's actually a great segue into my next question. If you could invite anyone for this podcast, who would that be and why?
Uh, Trying to invite first from the locals, people who are like living here in Miramichi, and they are like based here in Miramichi or in the New Brunswick. Sometimes if they are even out of the New Brunswick, and but they are like living, like they used to live in Miramichi, I might be able to call them online, having a online podcast, online chat, like on Zoom or meeting. But like, I'm an ambitious person, and I like sometimes think very high, and I would love to. invite someone that is so special to me. And since I was like a kid, I was reading him a lot on the history. I was following all of like not only he, but also his government and his country. So, Canada is a constitutional monarchy, and our current head of state is the King Charles III. Really, that would be a really big one if we can have His Majesty here in our podcast. And I don't think anyone before like even invited him or think about having him on a podcast. Probably he might be on some interviews, but whenever I feel like our podcast is ready, and whenever I feel like I'm a good host with enough knowledge and background and you know information, I would love to really have him one day in my podcast. So that's kind of dream. I dream big, but
It is very ambitious, I think.
yeah, that's what I'm thinking to do. That's really, really in the future. I don't know if I said at the beginning of this podcast that my first step is to having these conversations every day, every week probably, or bi-weekly. We are gonna upload them on the Spotify and the Castbox and YouTube, if for the people who want to watch. And then we decided to go sometimes maybe on live, so people can watch it live. And live show is kind of a little bit different, It's kind of you have more stress, and I might be able to ask some, like, I don't want to like ask challenging questions, but it might go towards some challenges. Yeah. And but my end goal is to make it like a interview that people can come in a like a conference salon or somewhere that people can come in person and watch our episode. And yeah, you can see and interact with the guest and maybe take a picture with
Would be great,
that.
yeah, to
So
have a
that's
break.
kind of an idea.
So I have this question. Is there any topic that you feel nervous to discuss?
That's kind of a good question. You know why? Because I was thinking another reason I'm doing this podcast is about the free speech. Recently on the social media, I realized so many people want to say what they believe in and they think about, but they don't want to share it on social media. Sometimes even it might happen even in person. If they ask some specific questions, they might say not the truth, not what they actually believe. They might say, oh, I might lose my job or I might do that. I just want to remind everyone that where we are living at, and here we have a free speech, and it's important to that people talk about whatever they believe. And then we can go on a debate. They might think wrong, they might think right. We can have a conversation and know why they are thinking like that. We are not going to fight with each other. We are just going to like have a conversation. So there might be a lot of various like topics that nothing is not going to make me worried about. What only would make me worried about is my guest won't be feel comfortable or relaxed, because I'm making in this podcast the very best. I'm making a safe environment that my guests can feel comfortable and share some of the knowledge or stories that people before never heard about. And it can be a new story. Many of them won't share on maybe some information on their social media, but here in this platform, in this podcast, the very best, we're gonna have this, uh, conversation and new stories that can influence so many people.
Okay. Well, if one day, you started this podcast and one day you realize that it flops, it completely flops, no views, no engagement, nothing, what would you do then?
We have any start that doesn't start with a failure. I'm sure I personally made myself ready for any type of situation like that might happen. But the point is, I'm never gonna stop of doing what I love. I'm doing what I think is true and benefit other people. I usually don't think only about myself. I'm thinking, what can I do to help people around me, people in the city that I'm living in, the community, the society, help and grow at the same time with me. You know, in some cultures and societies, I don't want to even name, but people, if they want to like grow up and if they want to get a better like position in their company, they try to say bad things behind their coworkers so they can get fired, make them fired, and then get their position. But what I believe, if you wanted to, for example, be the mayor, for example, if there is a city councilor want to be a mayor, and instead of talking negatively about the mayor and trying to win the election, what I would do, I would push the mayor to go a level higher. I would push him to go wherever he decide to go, wherever his decision is, and try to get this position then by myself, right? You know, I don't want to like say you go out of here. I would say bad thing about this guy, be negative, and then you know I try to help them to grow to wherever they want. And then I can, at the same time, they will help me for sure in this scenario to go wherever I want. It's like the quote that I'm always saying that you give people whatever they want, people would give you whatever you want. It's because you are part of the solution of a problem. So in that case, those failure wouldn't be a failure to me. It would be just experience to learn and step up. I'm already out of my comfort zone and yeah, I'm ready for any failure. So I don't want to even call it failure. I won't call it experience. Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely an experience. Yeah. Okay. That was actually my last question. Thank you so much
Yeah.
for
You're welcome.
answering.
Yeah, you might think like, uh, yeah, I'm just gonna give it a quick note on this podcast that uh, this podcast wouldn't be for the people that doesn't want to believe, it doesn't want to hear others people perspective, others people opinion. This is a podcast that we might one day have a people from different type of like a background. If we go to the world of political, one day we might have someone from the liberal party, one day we might have someone from conservative party, green party, or anything, because we want to hear from different perspective and we want to learn. There are many young people that and a newcomer that coming to this country and they want to learn what's happening in this world. What is this government all about, or what is this city all about? So they are gonna hear different perspective, and they are the audience, are the people who are gonna make the decision. We are not gonna promote anybody. We will promote our community for sure, but we won't promote people and the mindsets. We will just have a chat and try to they share their whatever they want, and we are gonna have the people will decide which way to go. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, that's great.
yeah. So we decide also maybe hopefully whenever we are gonna have a course, we are gonna have a tradition, another tradition. One of them was if any of my guests or you name anybody, we are gonna have them and send them invitation letter. At the same time, I'm gonna ask my guests to bring a gift with themselves, with for us, for not me, for this podcast, for the community of the very best. And the reason is at the end of each season or at the end of each year, depends. I'm trying to put all of those gifts on an auction and sell them and help to any charities that they need help. Actually, most of the charities need help, but yeah.
It is a wonderful idea. I've never heard of anything similar before. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like this podcast is just not only about me and the people listening to me. I'm here to bring people to have a chat with them, and at the same time, while people in my community and in my country learning from their experiences, at the end of each season or at the end of each year, we can like help more people who are in need. There are a lot of people who need help, but hopefully, if we get a lot audiences, we might be able to even help more to the people who are in need.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's it for today's podcast. And I can say, if you want to also, like anybody wants to be a part of this community and building something very impactful and effective, hit that subscribe button, follow us on any social media. We are going to be on YouTube and Spotify and Castbox. And we want you to tell us, what do you want to see in this podcast? Who do you want us to invite? And whatever changes you like to have. This is your podcast, and I want to welcome you to our community, the very best podcast. Before we ended up this podcast, you didn't name anybody. So I don't know who should I invite for the next one. People over there who are listening or watching us, they can tell us that who want they see in this podcast everywhere. But I want you also name someone. I'm gonna send them an invitation letter today to have them in the future if they are available. What do you think?
Um, I'll get back to you later on that.
You should tell me now, I think.
Like nobody comes to my mind right now.
Nobody. Okay, we will wait for our audience to let us know, and yeah, we'll see what's gonna happen. I'm so excited for this podcast. We have a great team. As I said, I'm gonna remind about our sponsor, the city of Miramichi, helping us to start this project. The Rot Hotel helping us to became our sponsor to record our podcast in their conference room. We have a great team. Mahdi Javadi, who is doing the editing, Sofiya, Alex, and Jonathan, that they're all a great big help. That's actually all volunteers helping me to make this project happen. Absolutely alone, I would not be able to make this happen. So yeah, that's it. I'm hoping everybody going to have their very best day or night. And I hope you enjoyed this podcast. The very best.